The idea sparked in my mind, a tale of bravery and quick thinking, perfect for young readers. Imagine a crisp autumn day. The leaves are turning brilliant shades of red and gold, and the air smells like damp earth and wood smoke. This is the setting for our story, a place where adventure lurks just beyond the familiar. Our hero is a boy named Billy, a freckled-faced 10-year-old with a boundless curiosity and a heart full of courage. He lives in a small house at the edge of the woods, a place where the line between the known and the unknown blurs with every rustle of leaves. He's about to stumble upon something that will test his courage. His love for exploration is about to turn into a real-life adventure. Billy wasn't just any boy, he was a woodland explorer at heart. Every day after school, as soon as his homework was done, or at least started, he'd grab his trusty walking stick and head into the woods behind his house. He knew every twist and turn of the well-worn paths, every towering oak tree, and every babbling brook. He'd built secret forts hidden amongst the ferns and knew where to find the best wild berries, though he always asked his mom before eating them, just in case. Exploring wasn't just a hobby for Billy, it was an essential part of his day, a way to connect with nature and let his imagination run wild. He imagined himself as a daring adventurer, charting unknown territories and discovering hidden treasures. The woods were his kingdom, and he was its intrepid ruler. "Billy, sweetie, before you go traipsing off into the woods," his mom called from the kitchen window, her voice warm and filled with affection, "remember what we talked about. Be back before the streetlights come on, okay? And stick to the paths you know. No venturing off into the deep woods today." She knew how much he loved exploring, but she also worried about him getting lost or hurt. "And take your whistle. You never know when you might need it." Billy, already halfway out the door, turned back, grinning. "Okay, Mom. I promise. Back before dark, familiar paths only." He grabbed the bright orange whistle from the hook by the door, gave her a quick wave, and disappeared into the trees, the sound of his mom's gentle reminder echoing in his ears. He knew she just wanted him to be safe. Billy followed the familiar dirt path, kicking at loose pebbles and enjoying the crunch of leaves under his worn sneakers. He knew he should stick to the usual routes, like he promised his mom. But then, something caught his eye. Tucked away behind a thicket of thorny bushes, almost hidden from view, was a narrow, overgrown path he'd never noticed before. It looked mysterious and inviting, beckoning him to explore its secrets. A surge of curiosity washed over him, battling with his promise to his mom. "Just a quick peek," he told himself, pushing aside the thorny branches. "Just to see where it goes." The path was barely visible, choked with weeds and fallen leaves, but Billy could see that it wound its way deeper into the woods, towards the sound of the stream he knew flowed nearby. The temptation was too strong to resist. His adventurous spirit won out, and he stepped onto the hidden path. The further Billy walked down the overgrown path, the more the trees seemed to close in around him, their branches forming a dense canopy overhead. The sunlight struggled to reach the forest floor, creating a shadowy, almost eerie atmosphere. He tried to ignore the feeling of unease creeping into his heart. He could hear the stream now, its gentle gurgling a constant companion. But then, above the sound of the water, he heard something else, a faint, muffled sound, like someone crying. He stopped, his heart pounding in his chest. Was he imagining things? He listened intently, holding his breath. There it was again, a soft, whimpering sound, carried on the breeze, definitely coming from the direction of the stream. It sounded like a baby crying. A feeling of worry washed over him. Something wasn't right. He quickened his pace, pushing through the undergrowth, determined to find out what was happening. Breaking through the last of the tangled undergrowth, Billy finally reached the edge of the stream. His eyes widened in disbelief at what he saw. Lying on the damp ground near the water's edge was a woman. She was pale and still, her eyes closed. Beside her, nestled in a thin blanket, was a baby, its tiny face red and wrinkled as it cried. Billy's heart leaped into his throat. He cautiously approached, his steps hesitant and quiet, as if he were afraid to disturb a sleeping animal. He knelt down, his gaze shifting between the woman and the baby. The baby's cries seemed to grow louder as he got closer, a desperate plea for help. The woman didn't move. Billy wasn't sure what to do, but he knew he had to do something. This was no longer just an adventure, this was an emergency. As Billy watched, the woman's eyelids fluttered open. She looked at him with tired, confused eyes. He could see a bruise forming on her forehead and a scratch on her arm. She tried to sit up, but winced in pain and fell back against the ground. "Help," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please. Help us." Her words were slurred and weak, as if each syllable took all her strength. She struggled to focus on him, her gaze drifting in and out of clarity. Billy could see that she was hurt, maybe badly. She looked like she was having a very hard time speaking. He knelt closer, trying to understand what she was saying, his mind racing to figure out how he could help. The baby continued to cry, its tiny fists clenched, adding to the urgency of the situation. The woman's desperate plea snapped Billy into action. He knew, with absolute certainty, that she needed serious help. He couldn't just stand there. His mind raced, trying to remember what to do. Suddenly, his mom's words echoed in his head, "If there's ever an emergency, Billy, the most important thing is to get help. Don't try to be a hero, just get help." She had told him to find a grown-up as quickly as possible and explain what was happening. She had also taught him about calling 911, but he didn't have a phone. He knew he had to run back home and get his mom. That was the only way he could truly help the woman and her baby. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. He had to be brave. He had to be quick. Before he left, Billy wanted to make sure the baby was okay. He gently touched the baby's tiny hand, which was surprisingly warm. The baby stopped crying for a moment and looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. Billy couldn't see any obvious injuries, but the baby was clearly scared and uncomfortable. Its little body was trembling, and its cries were weak and desperate. He carefully pulled the blanket tighter around the baby to keep it warm. "It's okay," he whispered reassuringly, even though he knew the baby couldn't understand him. "I'm going to get help. My mom will be here soon." He gave the baby one last, reassuring look before turning to the woman. He needed to hurry. Every second counted. Turning to the woman, Billy spoke with as much confidence as he could muster, even though his voice trembled slightly. "I'm going to get help," he said, his eyes fixed on hers. "I'm going to run home and get my mom. She'll know what to do." He wanted to reassure her that she wasn't alone and that help was on the way. "We'll be back soon," he promised, hoping she understood. He knew he had to be fast. He had to remember the path, even though he hadn't paid much attention to it on the way in. He took one last look at the woman and the baby, etching their images into his memory. Then, he turned and began to run, his sneakers pounding against the uneven ground, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The image of their faces fueled his determination. He had to get help. He had to keep his promise. The path seemed different now, running back the way he had come. The trees looked taller, the shadows deeper. Billy struggled to remember the turns he had taken, the landmarks he had passed. Had he gone left at the fallen log? Or was it right? Panic threatened to overwhelm him, but he pushed it down, focusing on the image of the woman and the baby. He remembered a gnarled oak tree with a hollow in its trunk. He had to find that tree. He scanned the woods, his eyes darting from side to side, desperately searching for a familiar sign. He tried to retrace his steps, his mind replaying his journey through the woods, searching for clues. The path twisted and turned, leading him further and further into the trees. Was he going the right way? He wasn't sure. But he couldn't give up. He had to keep going. Suddenly, his foot caught on a gnarled root hidden beneath a pile of leaves. Billy stumbled, his arms flailing, and he crashed to the ground with a thud. Pain shot through his knee as he landed hard on the rough forest floor. He lay there for a moment, stunned, the wind knocked out of him. He could feel the sting of a scrape on his knee, and he saw a smear of blood on his hand. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he quickly blinked them away. He couldn't afford to stay down. The woman and the baby were counting on him. Gritting his teeth against the pain, he pushed himself back to his feet. His knee throbbed with every step, but he ignored it, focusing on the task ahead. He had to keep running. He had to get help. He brushed off the dirt and leaves clinging to his clothes and started running again, his pace slightly slower now, but his determination stronger than ever. Finally, he saw it, the familiar sight of his house through the trees. With a burst of renewed energy, he sprinted the last few yards, bursting through the back door and into the kitchen. "Mom! Mom!" he gasped, his chest heaving, his face flushed, and his words tumbling over each other. He was so out of breath he could barely speak. There's a woman. And a baby. By the stream. She's hurt. They need help." He pointed back towards the woods, trying to catch his breath. "I found them. On a new path." He looked down at his scraped knee, suddenly aware of the blood. His mom's eyes widened in alarm as she took in his disheveled appearance and his frantic words. She rushed to his side, her hand gently touching his face. "Billy, slow down. What are you saying? What happened?" As soon as Billy's mom understood the situation, her expression changed from worry to focused action. "Show me," she said, her voice firm but calm. "Show me where they are." Without wasting another second, she started gathering supplies. She grabbed a thick, warm blanket from the linen closet, a bottle of water from the refrigerator, and the bright red first aid kit from under the sink. She moved quickly and efficiently, her years of experience as a mom kicking into high gear. "Stay here," she told Billy, "and put some antiseptic on that knee." But she knew he wouldn't stay. He would want to lead her back to the woman and the baby. "Okay," she conceded, "but stay close." She grabbed her cell phone from the counter and headed for the door, Billy right behind her. "Let's go," she said, her eyes filled with determination. "Let's go help them." Billy, despite his scraped knee, bravely led his mom back into the woods. He carefully retraced his steps, pointing out the landmarks he remembered, the fallen log, the cluster of birch trees, and the gnarled oak with the hollow trunk. He walked a bit slower this time, his mom staying close behind him, her eyes scanning the woods, her expression serious. The woods seemed less scary now that he wasn't alone. He felt a sense of responsibility, knowing that he was the only one who knew the way. He pushed aside the thorny bushes that hid the overgrown path, and soon they were heading down the narrow trail towards the stream. The sound of the baby's cries grew louder as they approached, a constant reminder of the urgency of their mission. Billy glanced at his mom, seeing the determination in her eyes. They were almost there. Reaching the stream, Billy's mom immediately knelt beside the woman, gently examining her injuries. "It's okay," she said softly, her voice soothing and reassuring. "We're here to help." She carefully checked the woman's pulse and looked at the bruise on her forehead and the scratch on her arm. She spoke to her in a calm voice, asking her questions to assess her condition. Meanwhile, Billy went straight to the baby, who was still crying. He picked it up carefully, cradling it in his arms. He gently rocked the baby back and forth, humming a soft tune he remembered his mom singing to him when he was little. To his surprise, the baby's cries began to subside. It snuggled closer to him, its tiny body relaxing against his. He continued to hum, his heart filled with compassion. He felt a connection to this little life, a responsibility to protect it. While Billy continued to comfort the baby, his mom pulled out her cell phone and dialed 911. She spoke calmly and clearly, explaining their location and the woman's condition. She described the injuries she had observed and emphasized the need for immediate medical assistance. She gave the dispatcher detailed instructions on how to find them, mentioning the overgrown path and the landmarks Billy had pointed out. She answered all their questions patiently and precisely. When she hung up, she turned to the woman and smiled reassuringly. "Help is on the way," she said. "They'll be here soon." She then wrapped the blanket she had brought around the woman's shoulders, providing her with some warmth and comfort. She checked on Billy and the baby, making sure they were both okay. "You're doing a great job, Billy," she said, giving him an encouraging smile. "You were very brave." The wait for the ambulance felt like forever. Billy's mom continued to talk to the woman, keeping her awake and alert. She gave her small sips of water, helping her to stay hydrated. Billy continued to hold the baby, gently rocking it and keeping it warm. He noticed the baby's tiny fingers wrapped tightly around his own. He felt a surge of protectiveness towards this vulnerable little creature. The woods were silent except for the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant chirping of birds. Every rustle, every chirp, made Billy jump, his nerves on edge. He kept listening for the sound of the ambulance siren, his heart pounding in his chest. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they heard it, a faint, distant wail, growing louder and louder as it approached. Relief washed over Billy and his mom. Help was finally here. Soon, the paramedics arrived, their bright uniforms a stark contrast to the muted colors of the forest. They quickly assessed the situation, their movements efficient and professional. They carefully lifted the woman onto a stretcher and began administering first aid. One of the paramedics turned to Billy, a warm smile on his face. "You did a great job, young man," he said. "Your quick thinking saved her life. You knew exactly what to do." He shook Billy's hand, his grip firm and sincere. "You're a real hero, son." Billy blushed, feeling a surge of pride. He looked at his mom, who was smiling at him with a mixture of pride and relief. He had never felt so important, so capable. He had made a difference. He had helped save someone's life. With the woman safely secured on the stretcher, the paramedics carefully carried her back through the woods towards the ambulance. Another paramedic gently took the baby from Billy, placing it in a special carrier designed for infants. Billy watched as they disappeared down the path, the sound of the ambulance siren fading into the distance. He felt a mixture of relief and sadness. He was relieved that the woman and baby were finally getting the medical attention they needed, but he was also sad to see them go. He had formed a connection with them, especially with the baby. He hoped they would be okay. He turned to his mom, who wrapped her arm around him. "You did an amazing thing today, Billy," she said, squeezing him tight. "I'm so proud of you." A few days later, Billy and his mom decided to visit the woman and baby in the hospital. They brought a small bouquet of flowers and a soft, plush teddy bear for the baby. Billy was nervous, unsure of what to say. He wondered if the woman would even remember him. When they arrived at her room, they found her sitting up in bed, looking much better than the last time they had seen her. The baby was sleeping peacefully in a bassinet beside her. A smile spread across the woman's face as she saw them. "Billy," she exclaimed, her voice filled with warmth and gratitude. "You came." She gestured for them to come closer. "I've been wanting to thank you properly. You saved our lives." Tears welled up in the woman's eyes as she spoke. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't found us," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I had a bad fall, and I couldn't move. I was so worried about my baby. You were so brave and so quick. You're a true hero, Billy." She reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving us." Billy blushed, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. He didn't know what to say. He just mumbled, "You're welcome." He looked at the baby sleeping peacefully in the bassinet, and a smile crept across his face. He was just glad that they were both safe and sound. He was happy he could help. As they left the hospital, Billy felt a sense of accomplishment he had never experienced before. He was proud of himself for what he had done. He understood now the importance of being brave and responsible, of acting quickly in an emergency, and of helping others in need. He had always loved exploring the woods, but now he saw them in a new light. He knew that the woods could be dangerous, but he also knew that they could be a place where he could make a difference. He realized that even a small act of kindness could have a big impact on someone's life. He smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his heart. He was just a kid, but he had made a difference. He was a hero. Billy continued to explore the woods, but he was no longer the same carefree boy he had been before. He always remembered to be careful and aware of his surroundings, paying attention to the landmarks and making sure he knew how to get back home. He always took his whistle and his mom's cell phone, just in case. He still loved the thrill of discovering new paths, but he also understood the importance of following his mom's rules and staying safe. He knew that adventure could be found even on familiar paths, and he was determined to be a responsible explorer. He also started taking a first aid kit with him, just in case he ever came across someone who needed help again. He learned to recognize different kinds of plants and animals, and he always made sure to leave the woods as he found them, respecting nature and its beauty. News of Billy's bravery spread quickly through the small town. He was hailed as a local hero, his picture appearing in the newspaper and his story being shared on the local news. People stopped him on the street to congratulate him, and his classmates looked at him with admiration. But despite all the attention, Billy remained humble. He knew that he had done something important, but he didn't think he was special. He believed that anyone would have done the same thing in his situation. He understood that it was just luck that he had been the one to find the woman and baby, and he was grateful that he had been able to help. He didn't want to be known as a hero, he just wanted to be known as Billy, the boy who loved exploring the woods. He knew he did what was right. And so, Billy continued to explore the woods he loved so much. He never forgot the day he found the injured woman and her baby by the stream. The experience taught him valuable lessons about the importance of helping others, of being prepared for emergencies, and of being brave even when he was scared. He continued to enjoy nature, but now with a greater sense of responsibility. He understood that even a small boy could make a big difference in the world, and he was determined to continue to do his part. He knew that exploring could be an adventure, but also a chance to be helpful. And that made his adventures even more special. Always he remembered the woman and her child. Always he was ready to help. He was, in his own way, a guardian of the woods.